Okay, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for joining us today as we are going to discuss distribution centers and 5S in what we're calling a virtual roundtable. So my name is Joseph Dunn. I am the Director of Sales Enablement here at Global Industrial. I am currently in our Global Industrial studios. If you've joined us for any of our previous webinars, I think you'll see that our studio looks a little different, right? So I think this is our, as I look off camera, our third iteration of our studio as we continue to evolve our space as we look to bring you, our customers, and anybody who's interested in our content, some valuable information to hopefully help you out with your business and your business practices. So before I introduce the gentleman that y'all can see on the screen, I want to tell you a little bit about what we're going to do today by just quickly reviewing our agenda. So as I just mentioned, we'll go ahead and I'll let the three gentlemen who are on the screen introduce themselves to you in a moment. They are our global industrial subject matter experts and our 5S certified roundtable guests for today. What we're going to do is we'll get to know them a little bit. We'll go into a series of questions, right? So we've put together a series of questions to really dig into how we think 5S plays in the distribution space. And hopefully, if time permits in our 30-minute session, we'll be able to actually field a couple of y'all, the questions from y'all on the line. So if you have any questions as we go, if you want to go ahead and put them in the chat, we'll do our best to either, field them a little bit as we go, or most likely get to them in the end, again, if time permits. So I'm gonna ask our subject matter experts to introduce themselves again in one quick second. Before I do so, I do want to just take a moment from everyone at Global Industrial, from the gentleman on the line, to thank all of our veterans as we are here celebrating Veterans Day. So again, to anyone who has served or is serving in any of our, in our military and our armed forces, we appreciate you. Thank you very much. We are grateful for everything you do for us. Now, my loose segue will be to one of the veterans on the line here. So Eric, do you mind if you introduce yourself first? Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Thank you very much, Joe. Hello, everybody. My name is Eric Ruscher. I'm the safety I am the safety products and service manager here at Global Industrial. I am a U.S. Navy veteran. So first off and foremost, thank you to all the veterans that are out there, and happy birthday to the U.S. Marine Corps also, in addition to this Veterans Day. So I appreciate that. Thank you from myself and my family. I am a certified safety professional. So I actually have worked in safety throughout my life, protecting people and facilities and employees and employers. And I'm also a 22-year safety professional in that realm as a CSP. So with that being said, I'm going to pass this on to Dan. Go ahead, Dan.
Hi, my name's Dan Reif. I'm actually the Facility Solutions Manager for Global. And I've been with the company for 4 years and I've worked in different roles. And in my past, I've worked in many different facets and areas of manufacturing and facility solutions. Our goal as a team with the facility team is to actually give the best efficient solution to the customer and actually help you out with your facility. I'm actually a licensed electrician in Illinois, and at one time, I actually worked for a company that traveled worldwide. Other things about me, I do have a degree in organizational leadership. And from there, I pretty much am here at Global. And I did work for another MRO distributor for 13 years before this. Anthony?
Good morning, everyone. My name is Anthony Hatcher. I'm a product and services manager here at Global Industrial. I've been with the company for about 2.5 years, but I've worked in the MRO space roughly 25 years. I have some hands-on experience working in some manufacturing facilities and I guess you would call screen printing as well as machine shops. So I worked my way up to where I am today, and I have a lot of experience both on the floor and up away from the floor that I'd like to share with you today and answer any questions that you may have. I think that's about it.
Very good. Thank you, Anthony. Two quick things for everybody on the line. So I'm going to struggle to call Anthony Anthony. We internally, we call him Hatch. So if I do reference him as Hatch at any point here, just please know that I am speaking to Anthony. It's going to be a little bit of a struggle as we've been calling him Hatch for a couple of years here. And then the other thing is, we want to give a little context on why we're talking about 5S in distribution centers. I think, as we all know, in our current environment and our current landscape, the demand that's been placed on distribution centers is higher than we've seen historically. I mean, with all of the online purchasing, with all of the home deliveries that are currently going on in the United States and and globally, the demand and the volume and the production levels that are coming out of our distribution centers are at an all-time high. And that's kind of why we got together as a group and we said, well, what information could we provide potentially to maybe offer some easy solutions, some light lifts, some thoughts to help out, some of those distribution centers that are doing more, quite frankly, than they've ever done, and quite possibly doing more with less, right? Depending on what staffing looks like and the ability to have folks in their facility. So again, the idea is just to kind of scratch the surface a little bit and learn a little more about what we think, how we think that 5S is one of those potential solutions for our distribution centers and our partners in those centers. We got to talk a little bit about what 5S is before we jump into some application. So, gentlemen, let me kick the first question out to everybody. Give us a brief overview of what 5S is for the audience. So Eric, I see you moving around a little bit. If I said, give me a couple sentences on your definition for 5S, what would that be?
To me, 5S is an easy and simple way to remove risk and hazard from a work environment, both for the facility and the employee. That's what it means to me.
Okay. Dan, you want to build on that a little bit?
Yeah. To me, 5S is a pillar structured system to take out waste and build a plan, to better organize your work processes. And by doing that, you're actually going to have a happier facility and things are going to be more efficient.
Very good. Okay, I like that, right? A little more textbook. I like that one a lot. All right, Hatch, I'm gonna give you the tough one. Sum it up in about 6 to 10 words. What is, if you had to give me the real short cliff notes, what do you got?
Okay. Keeping your facility productive as well as efficient, clean, and safe.
Very good. Very good. Excellent. Okay. So now that we know a little bit about it, we've covered the basics. So let's dig into it, right? We know we're talking about distribution centers. We know we're talking about 5S. Let's go ahead and start to dig in on how we think it plays. So in your experience, where have you seen opportunities for distribution centers to leverage 5S? And we'll talk a little bit about some of those spaces, right? What are some spaces that you've seen where 5S is a good opportunity for a center?
Sure, Joe, I can take that one. I've seen 5S work very well in tool cribs. Tool cribs, as you know, are hard to keep orderly. They're hard to keep stocked, and there's no specific process for doing so. Once we begin to engage with a customer and implement a program and the processes behind 5S, the customer as well as upper management leadership all received the buy-in. They all took to it very well and was very satisfied with the outcome. What do you think, Dan?
Yeah, I just want to throw in there that 5S actually is really a good piece for any facility. Really, in the big picture, the biggest piece is organization and having a plan to put it back. The biggest thing we see when we're out at facilities is we'll see brooms in one place, mops in another place, and mop buckets somewhere else. Well, if you put all your cleaning supplies in a shadow board and put your mop buckets in a taped area, you organize it, and that person, when they go back, it's always in the same place. So it's a really big piece to actually 5S, and that's just a small thing of what we can do. We can also tape floors and do other things in our facilities to make it 5S and more efficient. Eric?
So as a safety professional, I take 5S and I look at it in a much more specific world and a much more specific picture. So opportunities that I see for 5S specifically evolve around specific locations. A location that is always a problem in a facility is your powered industrial truck charging and maintenance area. So it's these areas where there's a lot of activity, but it's intermittent. There in the morning and at shift change, off and on during the day. All right. but there's a lot of hazard there, a lot of battery acid. You have a lot of trucks there. You have movement. So 5Sing and making sure you have all the PPE for that area in one spot where everybody knows where it is and everybody can use it, and they're not trying to find it or they're not trying to do work without it because they can't find it, is very important. But then on top of that, on the emergency response side, if you do have a problem, you need a 5S and you need to make sure that you have your emergency response ready, marked, and placed in that area where everybody knows where it is. It's not going to walk off. It's not going to be someplace where you can't find it. So there's a lot of opportunity in and around that area just to sit there and make sure you 5S and protect your people and your facilities and equipment.
Very good. Thank you. So, right. So I think that's a nice setup. And I heard three really specific spaces, which is interesting. Originally I thought maybe we'd have a little more overlap there, but I'm hearing, tool cribs, your Jan sand station, right? Your Jan sand closet potentially, and where you're, I would say where you're storing your forklifts. Eric, you said it a lot more eloquent than I did with in how you laid it out there. But, and also I think we could even probably, Eric, as a follow-up, if we said just PPE storage in general, right? Not just in that workspace, what would your thoughts be there if I said, tell me a little bit about just how you think 5S relates just to PPE storage on its own?
So that's really important. And Joe, to your point where you're talking about three specific places, I think it's a really important point to make is that 5S encompasses the entire facility. Anything and everything about your facility, you can 5S. It's really important to understand that. But when it comes to PPE, right, you have different sizes of PPE. You have different glove sizes, different mask sizes. You have different coverall sizes. You have different sizes of any and all PPE that's out there. Well, guess what? You have to organize that. It needs to be in one location so that everybody knows exactly this is where I go to get the PPE. This is where I know the sizes are going to be. It's easier for everybody who is managing the stocking of that. Hey, they look at the location. Oh, I'm low on size small, or I'm low on this particular piece of PPE. So it makes the idea that you can take a look, know what your stocking level is, and reorder quick, fast, efficiently, and get on to the next point. So there's a lot that goes on there with the PPE and just organizing it. And it creates less waste, less time, and ensures that your employees are actually happy because they know where it is and they can get it.
Hey, Eric, can I touch base on that?
Yeah.
Your thing too is when you're storing PPE, a lot of people don't think about hand sanitizer and the flammable piece of it.
Yes.
So you kind of want to keep in mind too, getting maybe flammable cabinets to put that in. And then that's another way to organize also.
You're exactly right. There's a lot of issues that are out there now that weren't before that are coming to light now. And that's one of them. Hand sanitizer is mostly alcohol. So you have to worry about the flammability of it. And that needs to be stored separately from everything else. But it's part of your PPE. It's part of keeping your people protected. So it's all part of it. So.
Very good. So we're kind of answering the question that's on the screen without me really formally asking it. But I do want to just check in on Anthony. Anthony, any thoughts, anything you want to add to, what the gentlemen have shared really as it relates to, 5S and the current COVID landscape? Anything out maybe outside of PPE?
I would say in keeping with COVID-19, a lot of the employees are probably dealing with a lot, right? So the stress of it, actually is enough to deal with. And then some companies that we visited do not have a full workforce. So they're being, pushed to the limit, and their morale may be down. I'll just call it what it is. So I see 5S fitting in as a program to kind of get the employee more motivated, get them more encouraged about coming into work, giving them something new to look forward to. And it's been received well during this COVID period.
I like that. I think I have a question or two that might bring us back into that in a little bit, but I think that's a really valid point and a valuable point where, in times of change, there's also good change, right? So there's a lot that can go into that where, learning that new process, buying into that new process really can have a pretty significant impact on engagement, right? Your day-to-day, that energy coming to work where, you're seeing the, what's happening and really the value that's coming out of these new programs. Good point, Anthony. Thanks. I just got to be clear. I'm having a hard time with Anthony. I got to start calling you Hatch. I just
Thank you. Thank you.
It's so instilled after the years, right? Very good.
Yes.
All right. So let's jump on to the next one here. So let's talk about some of the benefits, right? We've talked kind of about some of the places where we think it works, but let's go through some of the benefits of outside of maybe morale of implementing a 5S program in a facility.
I can take this one initially here, Joe. So benefits of implementing a 5S program in your facility. One of the biggest pieces in Hatch, Hatch actually started this process here when he was talking about morale. But it's even more important than that, and that is employee engagement. So when you implement 5S, you have to have employee engagement, and it has to come from the top down. And that's exactly what you have to do with safety. You have to bring it from the top down. But when you have an engaged employee and they have pride about their workspace, they keep their workspace clean, they're proud to come into work and they feel safe when they come into work, then what they're going to do is they're going to act and behave safely, and they're going to act and behave with efficiency and productivity. And all of that is positive for the company and the employer and the employee. And so 5S is a great starting point to change the culture of your facility. If you have a facility that's just all over the place and there's a lot of mess and there's a lot of waste, 5S is a great place to start to change that behavior and that culture.
Absolutely.
Or Hatch, either one of you.
Okay, I can jump in. I was going to say absolutely. When you begin to implement the plan and the employees start to buy into it, the benefits is I can't even say, it's indescribable, because again, the employees have a good sense of the facility, the company that they're working for, shows that the company cares about them. And for the company, the production is key in the efficiency by taking a particular workstation and moving out, things that are not needed versus things that are, needed there. And it just works in conjunction with a more cleaner and safer environment. What do you think, Dan?
Yeah, I want to really stress that it is a change in culture, number one. Number two, Hatch just hit on it. By organizing, getting rid of tools that you don't need is going to actually really increase the process, because now you're going to be able to find things a lot easier than you did in the past. The other thing too is a lot of people don't think about, when you're completing tasks, what's the distance to walk to get to that task to complete it? So by actually maneuvering everything into position, you're actually making it a lot easier for your employees to get around, which in turn is actually going to make a better culture within the facility.
Yeah, really good stuff, Dan. Just to kind of stick on I think the last thing you said, when we started and we said, some small changes, right? A program that is relatively easy to implement as long as you set it up right. We don't think about the small wins, such as not walking around as much.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, something as simple as saving a couple of steps every trip you make. And if you make that trip 10, 20, 30 times a day, you're walking out at the end of the day. You're not as exhausted, you're not as tired, right? So that little things can go a very long way. And I think this program starts to scratch the surface on a lot of those types of small wins that lead to much larger wins as an organization.
Hey, Joe, I want to add to this. It just popped into my head because all of this that we're talking about here, 5S is a way of taking waste out of the work environment, a way to move the more used pieces of tools and equipment closer to the employee, so they don't have to make that movement, so they don't have to walk as much, so that it's right there at hands to do the work. But there's one other point that is more important, I think, than any of this, and this is time. All of this saves you time. Time is money. A lot of people forget about that, but it is. And 5S will save your people time. It saves you time as an EH&S professional or as a supervisor of a line or anything, but it saves you time. And so implementing 5S is a great way to remove that wasted time out of the system. It's something we all need and want, is more time.
Can I touch
Absolutely.
on one other thing on that? So
Sure.
by putting this process in, you're actually going to make your employees happier, number one. And the biggest thing that is seen doing a 5S program is you have less turnover within your facility because you now have standards to work with.
Good
Mm,
point, man. Very
mm.
good.
I mean, that's a great point. I think everyone's experienced being asked to do a task with maybe some gray areas in the process or the storage, right? Having that defined. Yeah, Dan, you're absolutely right. I think that goes a long way. Now, Eric, I'm going to come back to you on something you said earlier on kind of that top down as it
Yes.
relates to, I think that speaks to the question I have on the screen here with, so how do you effectively implement a 5S program? Would that build on your answer there?
Yes, it would. A 5S program is only effective if the absolute top leadership has buy-in on it. So that means the CEO. The CEO has to buy in on it. The CEO has to say, this is what we're going to do. And then every level below that is going to have to jump on board and say, this is what we're doing. Right? If you start at the bottom and you're just 5Sing a little area or something like that, it's not going to get any buy-in. It's not going to be able to grow and be utilized effectively at that point. So it has to be from the top down. And the same way as for safety. A facility that the CEO doesn't take safety seriously, then everybody below him isn't going to take safety seriously. And then they're going to have a very risk-filled environment and a very hazardous environment. But 5S, you implement it, leadership has a full buy-in, and then you're going to get the employee engaged. Once you get the employee engaged and the employee knows this is what we're going to do, how we're going to do it, and that this is absolutely what we're going to do without question, you get full buy-in. And once they see the full buy-in and once they see the benefit, the employee runs with it themselves because they see the benefit of their actual time at their job and they like it then. Hatch, what were some other aspects? How do you implement 5S?
Sure. As you were speaking, I was thinking about the employee from the employee perspective. Sometimes change is not always received well.
Correct.
When you implement a new process and a new plan, employees have their things to say. The effective way to obtain the buy-in is to literally sit down with these employees, everyone involved in the process, and just talk through it. Lay out the benefits of it, lay out the processes that you plan, to around it. And, so for sustaining it, there's no other way to sustain it actually without, dissecting, these issues that come up, these concerns. Because if you just say, hey, here's what we're doing, from my experience, I've kind of been resistant in the past, but once you explain it to them, take time and, get them involved, then, you'll actually have an effective program and it will run smoothly. Dan?
I just want to throw out there, Anthony and I were out at a customer and they actually tried to start 5S. They had top buy-in, everything was good to go. But they actually decided they were going to put an incentive program into it. Well, the problem with the incentive program was one person was always collecting the incentive because they always had the best area within the facility that they were maintaining with 5S. So it turned off the other employees. So a few things that were proposed to try and get them back on track was to put the aisles they were 5Sing into groups. So it wasn't just one person. Another one was to actually have daily luncheons and seminars to talk about 5S and how it's going. The biggest thing is, you're going to have a project leader and you're going to actually have to have a 5S champion to really drive this besides upper management and keep it live, until it gets going and locks in.
Yeah, to Dan's point there, when he's talking about the incentive program, 5S is it's a simple way to start this process. And if you keep it simple and you communicate it to the employee that's being affected and you manage that change and you show them how their life will be better for it, then the buy-in's automatic. So it's one of those things where communication is key. It comes from the top down, but you have to engage the employee and the employee has to be part of the process. To Dan's point, the incentive program, one of the things they also could have done is taken that and gone to this one person and gone, what have you found that's been so positive? What are these best practices that you were winning so much for? Let's implement those in the other areas. And then you pass that along to everybody else and it starts helping everybody else out. So.
And if I can jump in really quick, Eric, you touched right on it. Keeping it simple is key. If you complicate matters, again, you'll receive more pushback than anything because
Absolutely.
Taking in new learnings and come with new challenges, right? So if you keep it simple, you're more successful to obtain the buy-in from everyone involved in the process. Don't complicate things. Just simply don't. And we can work with you through those simple processes and setting that whole thing up.
Correct.
I want to summarize a little bit of what we just shared, and I also want to share that kind of as we were going, y'all were answering some of the questions I had on deck, so I had the opportunity to kind of skip through some of the formalities there. But if we're talking about a plan to implement, I think you all touched on pieces, but it sounds like we put together a pretty full plan there as a group, right? Where you want to have buy-in from the top and champions throughout the organization. You want to communicate it well to everybody who's going to be involved and get the thoughts of really the associates who are going to be doing the 5Sing and leveraging the improved processes on a daily basis. And there's a lot of great ways to get people to buy in on top of that. And Dan, I really like I know it was a little bit of trial by error through a real example, but yeah, making team incentives sounds great, right? Getting more people involved at once so that you can celebrate that success as larger groups. Look, if that's a roadmap for going live, that sounds like a pretty good approach to me. I think you all laid out a really nice plan there.
It is. It is a really good plan. It's a simple plan. There is nothing hard about it. Everybody says, "Oh, that's it sounds really simple," but it gets hard and complicated whenever you try to implement, and that's true. But that communication piece, as long as that communication is open in both directions, and you have the champions that are going to listen to the people that are affected, and the champions move that information up the chain of command to the CEO and say, this is how we're going, but this is what we need to sustain it. I think that's one reason to the question there. How do you sustain? You sustain by proper communication. You sustain by having those champions stay on top of it. The one thing about 5S is if you go off the rails a little bit, it's really easy to stay off the rails. So it has to be that focus. It has to be a daily focus. And if you make it a part of the daily focus, you sustain. And if everybody lives to the 5S, those 5S's every single day, then you can maintain it and sustain it regardless of who's there in that point. If that's part of the culture, they'll do it.
Yeah, so let's stay on that question, right? So I know we're coming up on our time. I think that's the last topic we really wanted to cover. And Eric, you really walked us right into it. So we know some of the value that you all discussed early. We have some really good examples of the spaces that we could leverage. I didn't know we were going to get this far down to it, but we laid out a really nice roadmap for how to kick it off and how to get it started on the right foot. So Dan, Hatch, which one of y'all want to kind of jump in next on the how do we sustain, right? How do we keep this going so it's successful over time?
Okay, I could jump in really quick. One way we've learned to keep the program sustained, employee feedback, right? Companies shared their success stories with us. Starting small, one workstation at a time, okay? One little space in the facility at a time, because once you get that, program up and running and it's successful, other employees are going to become curious. They're going to want to know, hey, what's going on over there? Every time we go over there for something, it's there. How can we do the same? So again, everything that we touched on, keeping employees engaged, obtaining the buy-in, but most of all, starting small is a very good way, one section at a time in doing so. What do you think, Dan?
Yeah, I totally agree. Legitimately, you hit on workbenches. We talked about the shadow boards at the start, but those are like small pieces to start. You still have to have the top buy-in. Don't get me wrong there. But as soon as you start putting those pieces into place, like Catch just said, you're going to have a lot of interest within the facility of how can I do my area that way to make it work. And Eric hit on it earlier, talking about fork trucks, how they're parked and how they're serviced in that area. Just taping off the floors for the parking of the fork trucks is the same thing as 5S'ing. So there's so many different options you can do within the facility. So sustaining it is really not the question, it's growing it, because it's just going to get bigger and bigger.
That's a good point, Dan. Growing it. To Hatch's point, starting small and then letting it grow and grow organically, because everybody starts seeing the positive aspects of it and they're like going, wow, that made his life better. I want to make my life better. And that's really important to that point, is making it grow. I like that terminology a lot. So it really works that way.
It's just like you got to plant the seed, and as you nurture it, it just grows.
Yep.
And again, incentives work. You know, those luncheons that Dan referenced earlier, the weekly follow-up, you know, kind of obtain the feedback from everyone in the meeting, you know, in the luncheon program there, incentives work. Gift cards even, I don't know, but, you know, just be creative with it. Just be creative and make it fun and make it fun.
The words out of my mouth, Hatch. Creative. Don't push down the creativity of your people. Let your people be creative. Let them give you the ideas. None of this is set in stone. You know, let them be creative. If it works for you, it works for you. So let your people be creative.
So I don't want to knock the creative. I think the creative is great, but I can't let what Dan said about the grow element go without me kind of speaking to it a little bit more. So for everybody on the line, you saw throughout some of the slides that we shared that we had Ready, Set, Grow, you know, the logo for our Ready, Set Q4 campaign listed. And that's really the idea, right? So I'm going to give a little summary if you all don't mind, is, you know, we want to provide the tools, resources, you know, knowledge, ideas for, you know, folks who are interested, our customers, potential customers, really just anybody who's interested to help grow their businesses, right? We focused a lot on getting back to work in the previous months, right? So, you know, coming back into whatever the workforce was, defining what that looked like. And now we're really looking at, you know, that ready, set, jump off point. And this is it, right? You're growing your distribution centers, you're growing your space, you have this higher volume, you have this higher demand, and you're crushing it. What are ways to help that growth? And I think what we talked about today are some great ideas to really support that. With that being said, I know I referenced earlier that if we had time, we would open it up for questions. We are at the end of our scheduled time. So what I want to do is I want to say that if you have any questions, Eric, Dan, and Anthony will answer them as a group or individuals. We'll field them as they come in. Please go ahead and send your questions to webinars@globalindustrial.com. And we'll make sure that each of our subject matter experts that were on the call today have a chance to review the questions and provide you direct answers. We'll also be posting this video on our YouTube channel later on this week, just so if you wanted to go back and check the recording, please feel free to go ahead and do so. Might spur some more questions that you want to send into the group. And then finally, we will be sending out communications through all of our channels on a webinar we'll be hosting next week on antimicrobial film and surface disinfectant. So again, if that's a challenge or something you're interested in your organization, you know, please keep an eye out on our social media channels as well as our email channels for more information on how to register. Eric, Dan, Anthony, fabulous information. As always, gentlemen, I appreciate the information you provide us and you provide our customers. Thank you very much for your time today. And for everybody who joined, thank you very much. We'll talk to you all soon.
Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank
Take
you.
care.
Thank you, everyone.